Transformation doesn't begin when something breaks. It begins when something can no longer be ignored. Pluto doesn't arrive as chaos, it arrives as pressure. The quiet heaviness, the emotional weight you've been carrying, the reaction that feels bigger than the moment, the exhaustion that rest doesn't quite fix. Pluto shows us what's been stored in the body, in the nervous system, in the emotional field that's waiting for acknowledgement. This isn't about digging up trauma, but rather it's about listening to what's already asking to move. Because what we don't process, the body carries. And healing doesn't come from forcing release, it comes from making space for truth. So, in this video, I'll be discussing everything you need to know about Pluto and emotional detox. So, if you want to know more, stick around. You definitely don't want to miss this. Hello, my loves. As always, I hope that this video finds you well and in excellent spirits. So, welcome to day 23 of our 31-day wellness and astrology series. And today we're talking about Pluto. Pluto is mysterious, it's intense, but most importantly, it's transformative. Pluto is the planet of transformation, emotional depth, power, the shadow, release, and rebirth. Pluto governs the emotional material we suppress, deny, or store in the body in order to survive. And that in order to survive part is emphasized. We don't always have, I don't want to call it the luxury, but we don't always have the space to process everything that we go through. And invariably, whatever is unprocessed gets stuck in the body. And it lingers, and sometimes it festers. And Pluto, it's like Pluto takes account of all of that and then accumulates it. And in that accumulation, often we'll experience some sort of event that triggers us, that pushes us into transformation. I always think of Pluto as like water boiling in a pot, right? And eventually that water can spill over, right? If you don't add something to it, if you don't put a lid on it, that water can literally boil over. And that's kind of how Pluto operates. Now, this isn't about searching for what's wrong. Deep emotional wounds, trauma, you shouldn't necessarily label them as wrong, right? It's more so about understanding what has already shaped you and how to release it safely. Now, I say you shouldn't necessarily classify emotional trauma and wounds as wrong because there's nothing that cannot be used for your good. And whether you realize it or not, every single situation, whether good or bad, has helped you and shaped you become the person that you are right now. The person listening to this video has been shaped by all sorts of situations, circumstances, people even, right? And what ends up happening is it's not that you're saying, oh, this is bad, I'm throwing it away. Pluto is like, listen, this has served its purpose and it no longer serves you. So it's time to get rid of it. It helped you in some way, shape, or form. Thank it for its service and then keep it moving. And when you look at it that way, now trust and believe, it may take a little while to look at it that way because oftentimes we label so many things as bad, unpleasant, or negative in our lives, right? But when you look at it that way, you'll notice that you're constantly being shaped by everything that you're experiencing. And that's also partly why Pluto is associated with evolution, because everything that shapes you helps you evolve. And again, it's not about saying this is wrong. It's about, okay, this thing has run its course, this thing has served me, and it's time to release it, which is very much within the realm of Pluto. So here's why this even all matters. Unprocessed emotions, they don't just disappear. They show up as emotional reactivity, chronic tension, control patterns, anxiety or numbness, exhaustion, or cycles that just keep repeating. Pluto brings healing by allowing release through awareness and not force. And I want you to really reflect on that. So I'm going to say it again. Pluto brings healing by allowing release through awareness, not force. And this goes back to what I was just saying before. It's not about saying this is bad and I'm getting rid of it. When you become aware of how a particular situation shaped you, that's what I'm talking about here. And when you understand that and you become aware of it, now you can release it and you're not forcing a transformation. You're not forcing a purge. Now, the interesting facet here with Pluto is that Pluto governs like the concept of control. And Pluto can often sort of enlighten us as to how much control or lack of control we are experiencing in our lives. Now, contrary to popular belief, control in this sense isn't manipulation. That would be the shadow side of Pluto. Control here is awareness, because when you are aware of something, now you can take the appropriate action. And that's exactly what I'm talking about here. And that's how healing occurs with Pluto. Now, I'll say this, healing with Pluto is dirty work. It requires you to roll up your sleeves and really get in the trenches. But it's not about, again, this forced purge. It's about awareness. When emotions are acknowledged instead of resisted, they lose their grip. I always say the purpose of emotions are to be felt. And emotions, honestly, they just want to be acknowledged. Once you acknowledge them, they can go on their merry way. But when you resist them, they persist, because whatever you resist persists. And that's when we start getting into the realm of emotional baggage and trauma that we're lugging around with us like a ball and chain. So it's really important to, when we're talking about healing through Pluto and emotional detox, remember that the first step is awareness. And awareness is merely just observation. Like, okay, this is what this is. Then you can get into the processing. Well, why did this happen? And despite the fact that it happened, how has it served me? That's how you begin working with Pluto for emotional detox and eventual healing. So now let's get into some examples of Pluto by elements. And these examples help to demonstrate how transformation shows up. So first and foremost, we begin with the fire Pluto sign. So this means you have Pluto in either Aries, which is unlikely because Pluto has not been in Aries in our lifetime. But more likely, you have Pluto in either Leo, if you're of a certain older generation, or Sagittarius, more likely. So for fire Plutos, this is transformation through identity and power. So the themes here are suppressed anger, fear of losing control, intensity around purpose or authority. So fire signs are all about action. They're about identity. They are about motion, right? And that's the best way for you to transform. And notice, well, not notice because I haven't pointed it out yet, but I would like you to take notice of the fact that Pluto in your natal chart shows how you can transform anything, not just the area of life where Pluto is literally situated in your natal chart. So Pluto in a fire sign, let's say you've got Pluto in Sag, for instance, your ability to transform comes from your transformation showing up as suppressed anger, fear of losing control, or feeling boxed in or limited, right? And you can apply that to any area of your life. So when it comes to healing for fire sign Pluto signs, conscious expression. Remember, that first step of healing with Pluto is awareness. So for you, it's being aware and conscious of your expression and being intentional about it. And releasing the need to dominate, prove, or overpower. It's sort of like get your ego and get your control in check. The shadow side for you is definitely manipulation, that control by manipulation that I was kind of alluding to before. But healing would be releasing the need to dominate, to prove, to manipulate, or to overpower. Next, let's move into Earth Pluto. So this means you have Pluto in either Taurus, which is unlikely because, again, we haven't had Pluto in Taurus in our lifetime. Virgo, if you are a member of an older generation. Or Capricorn, which means you are Gen Alpha, which means you're probably not watching this video either. But this is great information to know just generally. So for Earth sign Plutos, transformation through security and survival. So what allows you to change and transform things in your life is to stabilize them, is to commit to them, is to structure them so that longevity is possible. So the themes here are scarcity fears, like no resources, no money, not having enough, control through stability. So the manipulation here would be manipulating a stable environment, manipulating resources, or attachment to material or external safety. Okay. And the healing here is loosening control, which can be very difficult because you probably have a death grip on it, and trusting internal stability over external certainty. So basically, that stability that you crave, you have to create it for yourself inwardly before you can experience it outwardly in your reality. So now let's move on to Air Pluto. Okay, so this means you either have Pluto in Gemini. Again, unlikely. I don't believe that Pluto has been in Gemini in our lifetimes. Pluto in Libra, which is very likely because I look at the demographics of my YouTube channel, and many of you, like me, have Pluto in Libra. Or Pluto in Aquarius, who is either in diapers or not yet born. So this is more so for my Pluto in Libra generation. So for you, transformation comes through thought and truth. It comes from verbal expression. It comes from exercising your throat chakra. So the themes here: obsessive thinking, mental control, or fear of being misunderstood or silenced. Okay, so remember, control is a big thing with Pluto. And so what may need to be healed is overthinking obsessively, right? Mental control, mind games, not being able to express yourself or trying to suppress or silence others, or just a fear of being misunderstood. And then the healing here would be speaking your truth, obviously, and allowing emotion without intellectualizing it. Remember what I said before about emotions. The point of them is to be felt. You can process them in your mind all you want, but that's not actually doing the work. Doing the work is allowing yourself to feel them. So allowing emotion without intellectualizing it is the first step in emotional detox for you. And then finally, we move on to water Pluto. So this would be Pluto in Cancer. Again, highly unlikely. Anyone who has Pluto in Cancer would be like probably over 150 years old at this point. Pluto in Scorpio. That's many of you as well. All right. This is younger millennials, I think, and Gen Z. All right. And then Pluto in Pisces, which they haven't been born yet. But in any event, for you, water Pluto, specifically Scorpio Pluto, transformation through emotional depth and attachment. So really diving deep into those emotions and really feeling them is how transformation shows up for you. So the themes here are emotional intensity, fear of abandonment, and emotional merging or enmeshment. So fear of abandonment can be a really big one. Emotional intensity, especially for you guys, especially those Pluto and Scorpio generational people. And merging or enmeshment, that's very emblematic of Scorpio energy as well. And so healing for you is setting emotional boundaries. Anytime we talk about water signs, setting emotional boundaries is a must. And self-trust and containment. Allowing yourself to trust yourself is a very big deal and is very integral to your healing, but also providing a container for all of those emotions. A direction even for them is going to be healing for you. Now, remember what I said before. When you resist something, it will persist. So let's talk about what happens when Pluto is resisted. So when Pluto is resisted, emotions stagnate. You know what it makes me think of? It makes me think of when you have like standing water, like water that's just been sitting out for a while, especially outside, and it attracts like mosquitoes and things like that. Like, yeah, think about that on an emotional level. Power struggles intensify. Healing feels overwhelming. Control increases, and release feels unsafe. Now, power struggles intensifying. This can be such a mind fuck because when you haven't become aware of the emotional baggage that you're carrying, it can either exacerbate your need to feel like you're in control of everything, so you are manipulating things, or your feeling of not being empowered and feeling like everything is controlling you. And so you feel like you've either got to exert all of this force in order to manipulate, or you feel like you're like a puppet and someone else is pulling the strings. That's definitely not a great place to be. Those emotions, if not checked, if not processed, they will almost feel like they haunt you because they become so intense. There could also be a lot of fear in releasing. You know, oftentimes when we go through something traumatic, part of the reason that we stuff it under the rug, that we ignore it, is because processing requires us to feel it again. And we so don't want to feel it again, so we just keep it there, not realizing that that will intensify. And even though the release may be just as intense, it's definitely necessary. But here's the thing, Pluto doesn't demand collapse. It invites honest engagement, authentic engagement. Transformation happens when pressure is released, not when it's intensified. And when you think about it, that sounds very logical, right? Increasing the pressure, even though pressure definitely makes diamonds, but if there's too much, it has to be released. And again, the releasing is about what no longer serves you. Like I said, pressure makes diamonds. So some pressure is necessary. Some pressure is necessary for that transformation. But then once it's done, and it's time to release. So let's get into today's wellness tip, which is a Pluto-aligned emotional detox. Now, this is great to do anytime you are feeling the pressure, anytime you become aware of emotional blocks that are preventing you from moving forward. It's also a necessary practice, I would say, during Scorpio season. But of course, anytime will do, okay? So here is a short and sweet Pluto-aligned healing practice. So step number 1, notice where you feel emotionally full or heavy. And sometimes if you're not conscious of the emotions, look at your outer circumstances. What patterns keep repeating themselves? And you may want to sit and reflect on why those patterns keep repeating themselves. As an aside and a little tangent, and I think I mentioned this in one of my videos earlier in this series, you know, oftentimes people ask, well, how do I do shadow work? When people talk about doing the work, how do I do it? And for me, one of the best ways that I learned is to just keep asking the question, why? Something happens. Why did this happen? Okay, I understand why it happened. Okay, what else do I need to know? Why? You know how kids will do that? They'll ask something, you answer them, they'll just keep asking why. That's a great way to implement shadow work. So think about emotional patterns or any sort of karmic patterns that are, replaying in your life, or notice where you feel emotionally full or heavy. Step number 2, name the emotion without judgment. So we're not even re-feeling it. We're not living it. We're just acknowledging it. We're naming it, and we're not attaching any sort of emotions to it. Step number 3, allow it to exist without trying to fix it. And this takes some practice, because now, step number 2 is naming it. Step number 3 is like feeling it, but feeling it without judgment, feeling it without attaching to it. You just allow it to exist. Don't try to stuff it down. Don't try to rationalize it. Feel the feeling. Step number 4, release through breath, movement, or writing. So if you are like an air sign or a fire sign, breath work would be great. Movement would be great. Writing is great for all signs, but find a way to release the emotion constructively, even if it means shouting into the void, yelling into a pillow, going for a nature walk, getting a good workout in, journaling, a video diary, whatever works for you, constructively, of course, release it. And then finally, step number 5, ground afterwards, always. So by grounding, get present into your body. And again, you can do that by breath work, being in nature, hugging a tree, putting your feet in the grass, that kind of thing. Like I said, it's a very short and sweet ritual, or healing practice, I should say, to engage in some emotional detox. Now, it's always important to remember that Pluto heals through safe release and integration, not emotional flooding. So when we talk about emotional detox, it's not something that you should attack, right? You have to make sure you feel safe and be willing to integrate as well, okay? It's not just about doing this haphazardly or recklessly. So essentially what I just described, this healing practice, this is shadow work, essentially. Now, shadow work isn't just about confronting darkness. I mean, clearly that's part of it because it's literally called shadow work. But it's also about reclaiming the parts of yourself that were pushed aside to survive. So a perfect example of this, and one that's coming to mind right now, especially at the time that I'm recording this because it's December 23rd, is the winter solstice. Now, I remember, especially as a kid, you're taught about the winter solstice, and it is the longest night of the year in the Northern Hemisphere because it's the day, on that day, there is the least amount of light, right? The least amount of daylight hours. And so for a very long time, admittedly until very recently, I always associated the winter solstice with just darkness, right? Because it's the shortest day of the year or the longest night of the year. However, once I, embarked on my spiritual journey and I started doing research and all of those things, the winter solstice is also, it's not just the longest night of the year. It signifies a turning point. It signifies the return of the light. Because as it is the longest night of the year, it also signifies the beginning of the light returning. And that's how shadow work is. And I say this because oftentimes we can get caught in this loop of healing where we're so fixated on the dark, on the emotional trauma, on the emotional baggage, what has hurt us, what we had to survive. But the flip side of that is that there are parts of yourself that were in the dark, and the shadow work helps bring them to light. And that is so beautiful. Parts of us that we have forgotten, parts of us that we had to put aside just to survive, shadow work brings it into the light. So it's important to remember that when doing shadow work, it's not just about the darkness, it's about the return to light as well. Nothing within you is wrong. Some parts just haven't been witnessed yet. They haven't seen the light of day, and shadow work helps to bring them up. And when Pluto is honored, emotional depth becomes strength, not burden. This is where we get the whole phoenix rising from the ashes thing. Now that you've conquered that, now that new parts of you are seeing the lights of day, this is beyond strength. This is the essence of transformation, and transformation into something lighter. And when I say lighter, the phoenix rising from the ashes has wings, being able to soar instead of being bogged down by heavy emotional weight. Pluto, emotional detox with Pluto, again, it can be dirty work. It can be so difficult, but it is truly, absolutely, unequivocally beautiful in every way, shape, and form. All right, my loves, that's pretty much all I've got for you for this video on Pluto and emotional detox. If you want to know more about your particular Pluto and what kind of emotional detox works best for you, then consider signing up for my signature natal chart experience, The Blueprint. It's essentially a natal chart reading and a transit report reading all in one. So you get a 60-minute live reading with me. You get access to a private online client portal with a bunch of resources. Plus you get a 30-day alignment map, which is essentially a transit report for 30 days after our reading, so you know what to anticipate and when to anticipate it. So if you're interested, the first step would be to sign up for a 15-minute free clarity call to decide whether this service is even right for you, and if it is, how to get started. So if you're interested, the link to that is in the description box below. And if you haven't taken my self-care signature quiz already, what are you waiting for? It's a cute, fun little quiz that helps you understand your self-care signature a bit better. And of course, the link to that is in the description box as well. All right, my loves, thank you so much for tuning in, and I'll see you in my next video. Take care.